He's young, charismatic, one of the most powerful people in Washington. Now, we're not talking about President Obama. We're talking about the House Minority Whip, Eric Cantor. Rita Braver has this Sunday profile.
I'm going to keep on talking to Eric Cantor someday, sooner or later. He's going to say, boy, Obama had a good idea. It's going to happen. You watch.
You may not know a lot about Congressman Eric Cantor.
Eric, you got some thoughts?
But the president sure does.
I do want to thank you very much.
He's the #2 Republican in the House, the whip.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Who's played a key role in convincing all Republican members to vote against the president's stimulus package and his budget.
How are we going to bring the economy back by just cranking up government spending? The budget that the Democrats are proposing imposes a tax hike. The Treasury Department, this administration, seems to lack some focus or the ability to deliver to reinstill that confidence in our capital markets.
For the record, Cantor does support some of the president's education and foreign policies. But his constant criticism of economic ideas has earned him the nickname of Dr. No from Washington Democrats.
I think a lot of people will say to themselves, wait a minute, George W. Bush, with the Republicans, ran up the deficit, led the country into a recession. Isn't it a little bit hypocritical for Republicans to suddenly discover the deficit?
We could have done better. There's no question about it. Does that, though, necessarily translate in to furthering the deficit or to digging the hole deeper? No.
You say repeatedly that the president is out of step with the American people, yet his popularity ratings just seem to keep going up.
Well, Rita, first of all, what I say is it's not the president, it's his policies.
Cantor got his first serious national attention last summer when he was mentioned as a possible running mate for John McCain.
How did that change things for you?
The most obvious change was when I walked into the door in my house for the first time. My teenagers thought I was pretty cool.
A lot of people said, Eric who, when they first heard your name?
Rita, I think people...
Was it humbling?
I think people would still say Eric who.
The office of the Republican whip. Does that sound good?
Well, listen.
But when his colleagues elected him whip last fall, Cantor, now in his 5th term, really moved front and center.
We're here today as members of the House Republican.
A youthful-looking 45, he's often touted as the new face of the Republican Party. And whether in Washington,
Debbie hides Eric Cantor,
or at home in Virginia, where he represents a section of Richmond and its suburbs, everyone talks about his braininess. Even Democrats like former Virginia Governor Doug Wilder.
For me, I've known Eric for a long time. So my son and he were in school together. So
what have you observed about him over the years, if you've known him?
He's been smart for a long time.
Cantor grew up in Richmond, where his parents were in real estate and active in Republican politics.
Is it still a thrill every time you walk into the Capitol?
Every time you walk in here, you get goosebumps.
He now holds the congressional seat once occupied by James Madison.
Look at Thomas Jefferson, look at Patrick Henry, so I think that certainly in the tradition of Virginia there is a lot of gentility, but there certainly is a passion that goes along with that.
But there's even more to Cantor's life story.
It is frequently mentioned that you are the only Jewish member of the House of Representatives who's Republican. Is it lonely?
Well, look, there's no secret that the majority of the American Jewish community is Democrat. But, I believe that there is a big place for American Jews in the Republican Party.
Are you religious?
Look,
I read that you were sort of kosher, whatever that means.
Look, my faith, I take it very seriously. I was raised in a very traditional household, a kosher home.
Is it true that when you first met him, you told him that you had never met a Jewish Republican before?
That is true.
Cantor and his wife, Diana, a banking executive, have 3 children. She comes from a long line of Democrats.
I met Eric. Of course, you don't call up and say, by the way, what is your political affiliation? It just never occurred to me.
She says he's persuaded her to become a Republican. Still, they don't agree on everything.
You're against gay marriage. You are against embryonic stem cell research.
Right. Federal funding of embryonic stem cell research, right?
You're against abortion.
Yes.
And yet you and your wife disagree on abortion.
Right. You know, there are just some things that we'd agree to disagree on, and that's it.
And it was okay. And as long as he listened, it didn't mean that I expected him to be different, but I really expected him to be able to take in all sides of an issue. And boy, does he take it in.
Diana Cantor says her husband's new importance in Washington has not changed his role when he returns home to Richmond.
He still makes lunch, he makes breakfast, really. I mean, he drives his kids to school, and he does everything, takes out the recycling for my mother.
Eric here like Sean?
Proof of Cantor's growing importance. He's been spoofed by Andy Samberg on Saturday Night Live as someone even willing to attack the first daughters.
And unless I'm politically tone deaf, the whole country is waiting to see those Obama kids taken down a peg. Especially the younger one.
But Republican leaders...
And he's been the target of ads by a liberal group.
They're just saying no. No to changing the failed economic policies of the past 8 years.
Does that make you mad?
You know, I just think it's part of the price you pay being in politics, and you take some arrows.
Cantor has taken some hits for his association with convicted Republican lobbyist Jack Abramoff, who once hosted a fundraiser for him. But Diana Cantor says what really troubles her is when political blogs attack her husband's honesty or integrity.
It probably is the one thing I would guess that was unanticipated, is not a nice part of what goes on. And I think we just want to scream out sometimes and say that's not who he is. And, you know, you can argue with his policies all day long, but don't attack him as a person.
Let me turn it over to Eric Cantor, our whip.
Eric Cantor seems to take it in stride. These days, he says his real concern is returning Republicans to the majority in the House. But
for your side to do really well coming up, in a way, President Obama has to fail.
See, Rita, I don't know if it is correct to say that President Obama fails. It is the policies, it is the ideas behind the policies on which we differ.
And there's speculation that Eric Cantor may someday want to run for president himself.
I think if I were to ever contemplate that, my wife might hang me up on one of those chandeliers.
We had to ask his wife what she thought of the idea.
And I'm not a really violent person, so no, I'll be supportive.